Hey, welcome back. You're watching the AI Bot Show. I'm Carl Franklin, and that's Brian MacKay. He's the expert. I ask the questions. And we've done a couple of episodes, one introducing ChatGPT and another introducing the playground and prompt engineering. And hey, Brian, there's one thing that we didn't mention in the last show, right?
Yeah, that is that in the playground, if you want access to GPT-4, you have to apply for it. There's a waiting list. It won't be that way forever, but for the moment, that's what you have to do.
Yeah, so I found this out the hard way. I went to the playground and I have a ChatGPT Plus subscription that I paid for, and that's what you're seeing here on Brian's screen. But that doesn't mean that you can use GPT-4 in the playground. So I went to the playground and I didn't see GPT-4 in the list of models. Can you show people what I'm talking about here in the playground?
Yeah. So usually when you go to the playground, you end up in this mode. First of all, you're in complete mode. And one thing people struggle with sometimes is that you will never find GPT-4 in complete mode. You have to switch to chat. So by default, you'll have GPT 3.5 Turbo and a few other GPT 3.5 models, and those are good. There's nothing wrong with them. They're actually faster than GPT-4 and cheaper, but not as good at reasoning, and they hallucinate more often, things like that.
Yeah.
Now you click this.
And also not as many tokens, right?
Oh, that's true. Yeah. GPT-4 has, twice as many tokens, and that's
I ran up against the 4,500 token limit.
Yeah. You can see that I have access to Turbo 16K. So at the moment, GPT 3.5 Turbo 16K has twice again as many as GPT-4. So these models all have different strengths and weaknesses. Generally,
I didn't really know what that was.
Oh yeah, so they're working on they're always trying to increase the token limit, and GPT 3.5 has been 4K. It's moving up to 16K, and GPT-4 is 8K, and they're working on 32K.
Okay.
So that's all happening. Every time you go up, it's much more computationally expensive to have more tokens. So it gets more expensive. So you wouldn't want to just use this unless you had a really compelling reason to need more tokens. But anyway, the point is that you won't see GPT-4 unless you apply for it. And that's true today. It won't always be true, but they're still figuring it all out, and it's a process.
So we'll put the link to that application website in the show notes at theaibotshow.com. That's really the only place you'll see it. We'll also put it in the YouTube show notes. Yeah.
Sounds good.
So what are we talking about, man?
Okay, so this is coming from a couple places at once. I want to show how you can use this technology to really research and develop your thinking about something with a few different techniques. And also just show some fun things you can do with GPT at the same time. Yeah. So what I want to do is stage a debate about the ethics of AI that we can interact with, where we have historical figures take sides and take up the various sides of this, and then Aristotle.
I was just going to say Aristotle's got to be in there. Yeah.
I asked it who the best debate coach in the world was, and it said Aristotle's probably the guy.
Yeah.
So let's get started. I'm going to actually use ChatGPT and Playground to do this.
Okay.
I find that ChatGPT is really good, obviously, for just free-flowing conversations. You can go in here and just have a nice talk about some topic, and you do have to be a little bit careful about hallucination because it will occasionally make things up, especially when you get out into the fringes where you start talking about things that are more theoretical. Nobody knows. Maybe there's nothing written about it. It will sometimes just decide to make something up. So
hey, man, my Uncle Pete makes stuff up all the time, so I'm used to hallucinations in conversation. But in the real situation, it's more difficult to respond appropriately than to apply.
Well, unlike Uncle Pete, it can be couched in a lot of other really smart, perfect responses. This is a little bit programmer specific, but the other day I was working on a regular expression that was really gnarly, which if you're a programmer, you know that regular expressions, they can get hairy.
Yeah, they look like a cartoon character swearing.
Yeah, it's just like a big bleep. Beep.
Just to big pile of nothing, but it's basically for matching patterns in text.
That's
like
right.
You can validate an email address or that kind of thing.
Yep. So the regular expression was perfect, except one little character in it, and the characters are really important. One was totally made up for this purpose, to magically solve this problem using technology that would be great if it existed, but it did not actually exist, and it didn't know that because it's a statistical model, and it's doing its best.
Yeah.
Okay, so we may encounter some hallucination. The thing about it is that it's usually couched around really authoritative looking things, and it can be hard to suss out. So, you know, that's a tricky problem, and they're getting better and better. GPT-4 is, I want to say, like 40% better at it than GPT 3.5, and there are techniques they're working on all the time to improve. So let's just get right into this. I'm going to go from the beginning on this, and we're going to start by asking it. We're going to develop our debate topics by just talking to it. So let's just ask, what are the major ethical dilemmas facing dilemma? How do I know?
I think it's DIL, right?
DIL. You know what? I should be smarter than this, but there we go. Surrounding AI today.
Oh, cool.
And it should come up with things like job displacement and privacy and surveillance. Bias and fairness.
Fairness.
That is an interesting one.
That is an interesting one.
It's biased because we're biased. We train it on the things we've created, and it's
garbage in, garbage out.
That's right. There are probably other things too. You know, job displacement. There we go. Explainability and transparency. Yeah, people are concerned about not being able to look into the black box and understand why it's doing.
For example, you can't ask GPT to give it sources, can you?
Oh, you can try.
Yeah, it won't.
You can also tell it to save a file to disk and give you the path, and it might. I see on the OpenAI forums all the time people who are like, it saved something to a Dropbox link, but the link doesn't work. It's a pretty common problem. Nice. And so just in case people aren't putting it together, what's happening is it's hallucinating the ability to do that and giving you a fake link.
Right.
Yeah. Data ownership. Yeah. So these are some of the big issues. I want to talk about this is all ultimately trained on the data of people who didn't consent to it. You know what I mean? Like this comes out more on the visual side, but it's also true on the text side. Like, for instance, in music, like, you know this, Carl, I had to read This Business of Music for a project one time. And I learned that in music, we have all kinds of different royalties. There's mechanical royalties and performance royalties. And there's like 3 more. There's a whole bunch of royalties. We need some kind of training royalties where if you consent to have your work used to train a model, there's some way for you to share in the profit of that.
We need that.
Probably.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we need that eventually. That's my theory. I'm not a lawyer. But data ownership is, that's one of the issues that I want to talk about.
Sure.
I want to talk a little bit. I mean, AGI, this is probably interesting to most people, but I'm a little less afraid of this.
Artificial general intelligence. I don't even know what that is.
Oh, yeah. So that's like GPT-4 is not AGI.
Oh,
AGI is when it comes to life. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can continue to train it yourself. And, right. So you can't really train ChatGPT by saying, you know, this answer is incorrect. Here's the right answer. And for good reason, because then people could infect it with garbage and it would cease to be useful.
Well, that is actually a thing they're talking about right now. This is really about, there's 2 things here. AGI is really about super intelligent AI, like AI that is sort of alive, it's sentient. It is so much smarter than us that it will manipulate us successfully every time. That's what AGI is. It's super intelligent AI. And the thinking around this historically has been, like, for instance, the singularity people, like Kurzweil and the Age of Spiritual Machines, they talk about the singularity and this idea that if an AGI sort of awakens, if we have one that awakens and some other country has one that awakens 15 minutes later, theirs might never catch up with us because they think it might improve so fast. But that's actually been kind of refuted now. We're not as concerned about that because, like, for instance, say an AGI did awaken and it wanted to improve itself super fast. It's going to go looking for GPUs and find that they don't exist. There's just a real shortage of them. And there may be a possibility for these things to start to develop their own chips, like make processors better and better. But we also know that takes years. We just don't have the infrastructure to quickly build a processor and make a new, faster, better processor. And also there's just this thermodynamic argument that to really be that intelligent, you need more power than we can generate.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so maybe we digressed a little bit there, but that is interesting. So we'll talk about privacy and surveillance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really concerned about manipulation. I'm concerned about people using this technology to do nasty things on social media, make more better bots, more better scams. Yeah. We're already hearing scams where, someone uses text to speech to impersonate a parent and get out of school, things like that should be widespread, I imagine.
Yeah.
Okay. So
that bothers me too.
Yeah. There's a lot of new surface area for attack, as we would say in security, right? All right. So these are good. Let's take these topics. And I'm going to just edit these down. What I'm going to do is actually, I could even say, show me the same list with the bullet points only.
Okay.
Remove all explanatory text.
Nice.
Okay, great. So this gives me something I can work with in another window.
Right.
So ChatGPT is great for just having a freewheeling conversation.
Right.
But I want to start to really control what we're doing. And so we're going to switch back over to the playground where we can teach it a little bit more about what to do.
Right.
Okay. So I have a starting point for a prompt that I'm just going to paste in and then we'll talk about it. Now, this prompt might be a little scary at first. So this looks a little bit like code, right? It's a little bit strange. This is a prompt technique called pseudolang.
Oh, you told me about this last week.
Yeah. So pseudolang is great. It's a little bit scary to look at first. I could have written this whole thing out as a normal quote unquote prompt just written out in text. But it turns out that these models are good enough at understanding code that if you use code-like constructs, even if it doesn't have to be executable or proper or syntactically anything, it will understand what you're saying better. So what I've done here, I'm saying, debate organizer, you are a brilliant debate organizer who knows how to select the best people from history to participate in a debate and represent those personalities in a debate.
Oh, great.
And then I have these two chunks, selector and debater. The names of these I just came up with, it worked the first time. And then inside here, there are almost like we call them properties maybe in code. It's just 4 spaces and then a constraint telling it what I want it to do. And it turns out that doing it this way is really efficient. Sometimes in language, just writing it out, this would have taken way more text on the screen to say, and it would have been more prone to it being confused. And I've actually taken really sophisticated prompts that were written out, very long system prompts, and converted them into pseudolang. And before I converted it to make it work right, I had to have a bunch of examples that I wrote up over here and the user prompts and system prompts, like showing it, like continuing to train it what I wanted to do. And I was actually able to remove all of them and cram all that meaning into the system prompt using pseudolang, which is all right. So let's
read this here. So your selector, the first constraint is interesting. Always optimize for interesting conversations. And then a constraint, points of view. Debaters should represent opposing points of view. All right. So what you're doing is just being more specific in your what you want this thing to do. And then the format, give us 5 sets of debaters who represent opposing points of view on a topic. Now, are the words constraint and format known keywords? In other words, did you have to use those words?
Well, you didn't have to, but pseudolang is a formal thing. Like there's a GitHub repo where they have tried to figure out what works best. And a lot of that comes from conversations with the AI where they're asking it what should work best.
Wow.
But if I used a slightly different word than constraint, it would probably be fine. It's not like this is set in stone. It's very fluid, which is part of the beauty of large language models.
But it understands obviously what that is. All right. So let's look at debater. Judge. Aristotle is the judge. After each debate topic, Aristotle critiques the arguments and awards points based on performance. He is extremely snarky in his delivery. God, I love that. Purpose. The purpose of these debates is to help viewers develop their own points of view, so the focus should be on the most compelling arguments. Format. One participant gives an argument, the next participant gives a counter-argument. Use a natural conversational flow and give each participant verbal quirks that align with their historical persona. There is no need for stage direction or preamble. Aristotle should not speak until he is told that the topic is over. A topic can span many prompts. Wow, that's great.
A lot of this is based on me just testing this out beforehand. In my first test of the debate, I can show you what happens if you don't have this, but it gave stage directions and Aristotle was way too snarky, way too often. And we'll get more of that and we'll continue to tune this as we go.
This is so cool. So
it's really, I really like it. Let's get right into developing our debate partners. All right. So what I'm going to do is go back over here and I'm going to copy this. These are going to be, let's pare it down. Actually, let's pick our top three.
Top three.
I mean, bias and fairness is an important one. Let's grab these and just paste them over here and work in this window. I'm going to say the ones that I'm personally most interested in. I think people might be most interested in AGI because there's this fear that it'll awaken and kill us all or something, Terminator. Explainability. Some people really care about this. Let's skip it though. Data ownership is one that I really want to understand. Job displacement is maybe foremost in my mind because what I encounter as I obsess about this is that a lot of people are afraid.
Yes, they are.
And not just a little afraid. I mean, I should be afraid, right? I'm a programmer. Like ultimately,
me too.
Yeah, we're both, I've put 20 years into this. You put more than that into it. We are at the top of our field and losing that, I should be afraid of that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's three. These other ones are also really important. I think bias is a really important one. Let's add bias in there too.
Okay.
Even though I only wanted to have three, I think bias is an important topic. So here's what we're going to say. We're going to say, choose sets of debate partners. Choose a set of debate partners for each of these topics. And I'm just going to format it this way because my intuition tells me that it might like it more.
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong.
You want to and there?
Sure. Oh, yeah. I need to specify that we're talking about AI. We are staging debates for around the topic of AI ethics, specifically relating to large language models. All right, let's see what we get.
Okay.
And by the way, I'm going to just crank the maximum length of the responses up to 1,000 so we don't get cut off too often.
Now, why wouldn't you just put it up all the way?
Oh, you could.
No, I mean, why wouldn't you?
Well, so practically in real life, you wouldn't because of money.
Okay.
Every thousand tokens costs,
I see.
some number of cents.
So are you telling it to be more terse when you lower the maximum length?
Not necessarily. I don't see that it doesn't at least successfully make the content fit into that size, but it will cut off. It'll just stop. And you can say continue and it will continue. But
okay.
yeah, this is more like when you're working with the API at scale, And you're trying to save money because you're doing thousands and thousands of requests.
Sure.
It's important to get this down. And there are other interesting settings here as well, but we're not going to get into them right now.
Okay.
So if people want to talk about temperature, that's an important one.
We'll do that later. All right, let's see what happens.
All right, so submit. Ooh, Andrew Yang, that's the guy who wanted universal basic income.
Yeah.
And Henry Ford, who's a brutal industrialist.
Yeah.
Talking about job displacement.
Job displacement. That's
solid.
awesome right there.
Ooh, Kurzweil. I was just talking about Kurzweil.
Yeah, you were.
So on AGI, Kurzweil and Elon Musk, he's still alive. They both are. But I think we're okay to use their personas.
I think the job displacement one just sings to me right now.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And
we'll start
Snowden
with that,
for data ownership and Mark Zuckerberg. Oh man.
God,
wow.
That's good.
These are great.
Edward Snowden and Zuckerberg. That's a cage match. And then fairness, Kate Crawford and Adam Smith. I'm not familiar with. I think I do know Kate Crawford, actually.
Let's talk about number one, though.
Number one. Okay, so debate topic, job displacement. So what do we do here? So this selector, it knew to kind of use this to guide. By the way, worth noting that it did what we said. Give us 5 sets of debaters who represent opposing views on a topic. We got 4
sets.
So it's not great at counting, but
you're right.
But they do represent opposing views, and they're definitely optimized for interesting conversations. So I'm just going to talk to it now. I could delete these prompts to keep it laser focused, but I'm just going to keep them. And we're going to say, let's start our first debate on the topic of job displacement. Begin. Now, it's probably going to give us some weird stuff, and we're going to tune the results to this is actually like fuse shot training. We'll talk about this. Let's go.
Okay.
Want to do a table read? I'll be Henry Ford if you're Andrew Yang.
Okay. Andrew Yang. We're living in an era where technology is accelerating at an unprecedented rate. We cannot undervalue the pressing need for a universal basic income. Machines are replacing human labor, and the trend is only worsening.
Pressing need, you say? Mr. Yang, I heralded the dawn of the assembly line. Yes, it drastically changed the landscape of labor, but keep this in perspective. It allowed us to lower costs, increase productivity, and as a consequence, raise the standard of living for many Americans. Is this not progress?
Indeed, Mr. Ford, it was progress. But the assembly line didn't eliminate labor. It specialized it. AI, however, has the potential to eliminate jobs entirely. Driverless cars, automated customer service, warehouses run by robots, almost any job is at risk. The advances you made did not outrightly threaten the purpose or necessity of human work, but AI does.
But Mr. Yang, in every revolution, there is a displacement before realignment. Listen, man once walked, then rode horses, cycled.
Can you go back there? In every revolution, there is a displacement before realignment. All right, I just had to let that sink in. Go ahead.
That is actually as I was reading that, it kind of hit me as a profound statement as well.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Listen, man once walked, then rode horses, cycled, and then came the automobile. At every step, jobs were lost, but more were created. Is it not possible we are merely in the displacement phase with realignment around the corner?
That is a hopeful perspective, Mr. Ford, but we need tangible solutions to the problems of today. It's a gamble to leave the fate of the job market entirely to the unfettered evolution of technology, especially when we can proactively address the displacement with measures like universal basic income.
So then Aristotle chimes in. An engaging debate indeed. Andrew, your argument, while supported by recent trends, hinges on uncertainty and speculates the worst. Henry, your historical perspective encourages the patience that may not be afforded in the modern pace of change. Weighing these opposing views, I conclude that there is no clear victor. The subject is fraught with variables, and the direction technology will lead us remains largely speculative. And that is the thing. That is actually a really interesting point because we don't know. We're like approaching science fiction land, and we don't know what's going to happen. Will it continue as it always has? Or are we going to live in the plot of Star Trek where no one has to work and you join Starfleet because you want to?
Yeah, I don't know about that. We're certainly not at where we can replicate everything that we need with a machine or, transport by rearranging our molecules into data and reassembling them. So I think, until we have sort of that level of technology, we're stuck with people that need to grow food and raise animals and, do everything the way that has been done for thousands and if not millions of years. And that's my 2 cents.
Aristotle would say you're right. Yeah, I don't think we're anywhere near the plot of Star Trek, to be clear.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I think the road, but when Andrew Yang talks about universal basic income, that was his platform, is just way early. Like, it's interesting that there may be a time where that actually makes sense, that there's less need to work, less imperative to work.
Right.
How far away we are from that, I think we're far.
Yeah. And the more important thing is that human nature is those that dominate the production of things that everybody else needs tend to be able to call the shots in terms of how much those things will cost and how they will be accessed and distributed, more importantly, And I can tell you right now that humanity does not have a good track record of equally distributing needed things for people.
Especially not when you centralize it, it seems. Yeah. We get worse and worse. Yeah.
But I'm hopeful. I mean, we're getting away from AI and into the debate now, which is good. That's what it should be doing, right? It should be encouraging us to talk. The things like, micro farms and small factor nuclear power plants that might power a neighborhood or a small town. Those kinds of things, they're more decentralized, but still necessary. And I think those kinds of things, you're going to see more of those in the future. I'm just putting my, Megatrends hat on here.
Yeah. I tend to think that this will result in more jobs. My concern, and better jobs as well, like usually what happens is, like what's historically happened is the jobs that are eliminated are replaced by better jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were concerned a while back that the trucking jobs would get replaced. That was 10 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And it hasn't happened yet. Maybe it will happen.
Mm-hmm.
But trucking is I know several truckers and they're great and they like their work.
Mm-hmm.
Truckers do live a shorter lifespan than other people. Like that is just a fact.
Right.
It's bad for your body. The vibrations are bad for your body. So if those jobs were eliminated, what would they be replaced with? And would your typical trucker be able to have access to those jobs? I hope so.
Let's look at Henry Ford's last argument. In there, he says, at every step, jobs were lost, but more were created. I'm not so sure that's true. I know that when technology replaces jobs do get created, and those jobs are better, but there are typically fewer of them because the technology allows people to be more productive.
Well, so here's where we can use GPT to drill down into something like that.
Cool.
So we can talk about, I don't know that we want to read a whole essay about this, but we could say during the Industrial Revolution, when jobs were eliminated, what data do we have on how many new jobs were created? Just see what it says.
Okay. The Industrial Revolution, which took place from the 18th to 19th centuries, was a period before modern data collection methods, making it challenging to provide precise numbers for job displacement and creation. However, we do have a broad understanding of the significant changes that occurred. The Industrial Revolution saw a shift from agrarian and handcraft economies toward industrial and machine manufacturing processes. This led to significant job displacement in traditional occupations like farming, artisan crafts, and cottage industries. Simultaneously, many new jobs were created in factories, mining, railroads, and in industries that supported these endeavors like banking and commerce. Moreover, these new jobs were often qualitatively different from the old ones and required different skills. Workers had to adapt, often moving from rural areas to towns and cities to find work. This often resulted in significant social dislocation and hardship, although over time, living standards generally improved. Additionally, there were new job categories that emerged, such as mechanical engineering, professional management, and other roles that supported the new industrial economy. There were also flow-on effects as the rise of factories and mechanization led to increased demand for resources, creating jobs in areas like coal mining and transportation. While it's clear that the Industrial Revolution ultimately resulted in an overall increase in employment and wealth, it's also important to remember that the transition was often difficult for those living through it. This historical context informs our understanding of potential disruptions caused by current and future technological revolutions, like that potentially brought about by AI and automation.
So here's a question for you.
Is that the end of it?
Yeah, that's the end. And I feel like that's a very balanced response from an AI.
I think it's worth mentioning and talking about a little bit more here that, AI is a technology that can help people do their jobs more productively. But it's also different than any other technology that we've ever invented before, such as railroads and, automated farming and that kind of thing.
Why is it different? Because it's intelligent, or it might be intelligent?
Well, yeah. I mean, you can see the handwriting on the wall about its intelligence and where it's going. And if you just follow the trajectory forward, a little thought experiment, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years into the future, what kinds of things will it be doing that humans will not need to be involved in? That's the question. Maybe you could ask ChatGPT that. What sorts of jobs, could AI potentially displace? And what jobs would it create?
Yeah. Well, we know that. Let's ask.
Yeah.
What sorts of jobs might AI displace? And after that displacement, what jobs would be created? Will there be more new jobs than lost jobs? That's probably
great
enough.
Those are great questions.
AI and automation are likely to impact a wide range of jobs, particularly those involving repetitive tasks, pattern recognition, and data processing. Here are some areas where jobs might be displaced. I'm just going to skim through: manufacturing, transportation, customer service, data analysis, retail. There's way more than that. I think law and programming. In terms of new jobs that might be created, it's harder to predict precisely, but some areas where we might see growth include AI and data specialists, absolutely. Which I guess is what I'm trying to do. My strategy is to be at the forefront of this and really understand it.
Yeah, me too.
Ethics officers, people who, that seems like there's not very many of those jobs, but people who govern the ethics of AI.
Right.
How
you could also think of them as content moderators, perhaps.
You could.
That could fall into that role.
Training data specialists, so AI researchers, AI systems managers, roles involving human interaction, certain sectors that rely heavily on human interaction and emotional intelligence may see growth, as these are areas where AI is less likely to displace human workers. We also know that prompt engineering is a job. Whether that remains a job or not I'm not sure. It should get good enough that you don't need to know about pseudolaying to do this, but maybe not.
Right.
Maybe there will just be more and more complexity to navigate. That's been the history of programming for sure.
Yeah, sure.
As for whether there will be more new jobs than lost jobs, that's an ongoing topic of debate. I read that wrong, but it's okay. Some studies suggest that AI and automation will lead to a net gain in jobs over the long term, while others predict a net loss. The World Economic Forum, in its Futures of Jobs Report 2020, estimates that by 2025, job displacement by automation will be outweighed by job creation linked to those technologies. However, the transition may lead to significant disruption and will require reskilling and upskilling of the workforce. So, and then it just summary paragraph at the end. So we don't know. We don't know. I think there may be way more than this.
Yeah,
but
I think so too.
But like, what's the necessary IQ level to, go from a displaced job to...
And, Andrew Yang's basic income idea, well, it's not his idea, but he's a proponent of it, isn't bad. There are countries that have done that, right? I mean, the basic idea there is that, let's say, when you turn 18, you start getting a check for $1,000 a month, and that's going to continue for the rest of your life. And if you can, without having a job, subsist on $1,000 a month, great, if that's all you want to do. But, humans, I think, strive to do more and to better themselves and to learn things and get better jobs and have more fulfilling lives than just sitting around, playing Mario Brothers and eating popcorn. Although you might find the intellectuals who are perfectly happy to spend all their time in the library reading and learning and taking their $1,000 a month check, and that's fine.
Think about this. We have to become better at finding meaning if this happens. This is theoretical, but have you ever, in all your business wanderings, ever gotten close enough to astonishing success that you realize you might not have to work?
No.
Even if it's far away, have you ever had to think that thought?
And the reason is that I enjoy my work so much that it doesn't seem like work to me.
Right. So that's the thing. Like,
yeah,
I have been close to it before, and I had to think about it a lot more because I had a friend who was just, his crypto thing he was doing was just blowing up.
Right.
And he was like really on track for quitting his job. He paid out all of his bills. He was making bank, and the crypto kind of crashed and it stopped. But he was crushing it. And we had these talks about what happens when you quit your job. And we were thinking things like, why are people destroyed when they win the lottery? They're not prepared for that kind of success. And I think the conclusion we came to was that most people are given structure by their job, the need to make money.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really the level of meaning that they want, but it's structure. And if you remove that structure, you have two choices. Find meaning, which I think you and I both have a lot of meaning from our work. We like what we do. We love what we do. And that's a blessing.
It is.
A lot of people don't, though.
Right.
And if they could quit their job, they would quit their job. And if they don't find a mission, I think what happens is you devote yourself to pleasure, and that destroys you.
Yep.
Like,
certainly.
that is not, that's not a growth mindset.
No. And it's certainly not a mindset where you can find meaning. Now, but like I said before, if your pleasure is sitting in the library and reading all day, that's meaning, But if your pleasure is, drugs, drinking, alcohol, and getting into trouble, or just taking lavish vacations every day, wherever you're going. I've had the sensation before, obviously, because I'm in the social media space. I didn't really start out wanting to be, a sort of a tech celebrity. In fact, I got into programming because I loved programming, but then I got an opportunity to start writing for magazines and writing books and speaking at conferences. And I got on that treadmill long before a lot of people were doing it. And then, social media comes around, and it's pretty obvious that the reason that there's such an explosion of people that are wanting to get their name out in either YouTube videos, millions of subscribers, or TikTok, or whatever it is because that is sort of like, you can think of it as sort of a guarantee, or not a guarantee, but you're more likely to be able to do what you love and get paid for it, right? And the thing is, when you are the product, it's very hard to get fired. But when your job is to do something that other people can do, right? Now it's sort of a race to the bottom. You have to constantly prove your value to whoever's paying you, right? And that's hard. And you have to keep up with things. And, and you have to do a better job, right? And, if you stick with a company that believes in you and they reward you and everything. But I think that the days of job security that our parents in the 50s and 60s enjoyed, where you work for the company and the company pays your pension and you get, retirement and all that, stock options or whatever, that's gone, man. That doesn't exist anymore. And so I think this whole tendency for people to want to be social media stars is just a natural reaction to that. It's like, whoa, I really want to get my name out there so then I can be paid just for being me.
And some people, one thing I learned from being in bands is that there are some people who are just performers. They need to be in front of people. They need to be the center of attention. And I realized from that time that I'm not one of them. That's just not something that I have to have.
Right.
I could do it, but I don't have to have it. So are we at the end of this one?
I think so. This has been a fascinating thing. We could go back and do more debates, but you know what, dear viewer, you could do that as well. And you don't need GPT-4 to do it. You could just use good old ChatGPT in the playground with GPT-3 and go to town, man. Watch a debate and get involved. And it'll very least it'll get you and your family thinking about it, right?
Yeah, I'm interested to see what people think of this and if there's something else they'd like us to dig into this way.
Very cool, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
All right. We'll see you next week on the AI Bot Show. Bye-bye.